I think most people thought that the Super League was a bit of a flash in the pan and perhaps that things would fizzle out and not come to fruition even if they won their court case, which they did. But what is dead may never die, but comes back a little later and with a new ruling in their favor and a more fleshed out format. Hey fellas and ladies, my name's Adrian, and with the news from this morning, let's quickly go over what the court ruling was regarding the sporting monopoly that UEFA and FIFA has, as well as the statements from the likes of Real Madrid and Barcelona regarding the Super League. Sorry, but when the leagues are called like Star League, those sound like Mario Kart to me, my friend. The Super Mario Star League. Now, the European Super League, of course, first came to light back in 2021 and basically immediately collapsed as UEFA threatened the teams that were involved, as well as fan protests forcing most clubs to pull out of the prospective competition. The only two teams that stuck with it were Barcelona and Real Madrid. Now, A22 Sports, the company behind the Super League, they basically operate as the organizers and marketers of the Super League. They went to the European Court of Justice, or the ECJ, as they believed that UEFA and FIFA had unlawfully blocked the Super League, and the ECJ agreed with them. In their statement from December 21st, they said, quote, "The FIFA and UEFA rules on prior approval of inter-club football competitions such as the Super League are contrary to EU law. They are contrary to competition law and the freedom to provide services. The FIFA and UEFA rules making any new inter-club football projects subject to their prior approval, such as the Super League, and prohibiting clubs and players from playing in those competitions are unlawful. There is no framework for FIFA and UEFA rules ensuring that they are transparent, objective, non-discriminatory, and proportionate. Similarly, the rules giving FIFA and UEFA exclusive control over the commercial exploitation of the rights related to those competitions are such as to restrict competition, given their importance for the media, consumers, and television viewers in the European Union." Now, this decision is binding and cannot be appealed by UEFA or FIFA, meaning that the way is clear for the Super League or any other breakaway football competition to be put into practice, at least in theory, because the ECJ also noted, quote, "That does not mean that a competition such as the Super League project must necessarily be approved. The court, having been asked generally about the FIFA and UEFA rules, does not rule on that specific project in its judgment." So essentially, this ruling doesn't mean, hey, the Super League must go ahead. This was strictly about the monopoly that UEFA and FIFA had and how they are unlawful. Before we get to the format, here are what some notable reactions have been. I won't read out every statement in full, nor every statement in general, because you'll get the gist pretty quickly. But here we go. Predictably, Florentino Perez and Joan Laporta reacted with excitement. Papa Perez pointed to the fact that 70 years ago, Real Madrid was at the heart of the creation of the European Cup, aka Champions League, and now this is the next step that football needs in order to save football. He also mentioned that they understand there will be campaigns against them, but they will fight through it, and asks other European clubs to be open to a dialogue and to help them figure this out together for the betterment of the game, etc., etc. Laporta and Barcelona said, quote, "As one of the clubs driving the Super League project, FC Barcelona feels that the sentence paves the way for a new elite-level football competition in Europe by opposing the monopoly over the football world, and wishes to initiate new discussions as to the path that European competitions should take in the future." However, notable clubs at the European level like Man United, well, notable, that's debatable at the moment, but their history in the competition is notable, I guess. Anyway, clubs like United, Bayern Munich, Borussia Dortmund, PSG, AS Roma, Atletico Madrid have already spoken out against the Super League, all echoing that their stance on it has not changed and they do not support it. La Liga also spoke out against it, as expected, as Javier Tebas can't help himself from voicing his opinion on everything. UEFA's president, Alexander Ceferin, before I get to his statement, please dude, scrap the new Champions League format. It sucks. Nobody wants it. I now support the Super League because of that. I'm joking. I do not. But I do not like the direction the Champions League format is heading in. And funnily enough, there are now murmurs that UEFA may scrap the format change and stick with the current one for now. So, I mean, I personally hope so. Anyway, Ceferin was feeling a little bit sassy this morning after the ruling and said, quote, "We will not try to stop them. They can create whatever they want. I hope they start their fantastic competition as soon as possible with 2 clubs. I hope they know what they're doing, but I'm not so sure about that." Granted, I'm not a UEFA Ultra either, more a supporter of the history and prestige of the Champions League in particular. UEFA and FIFA are criminal. They are not the good guys. They say football isn't for sale, yet they will happily sell off competitions to whoever opens up their wallets the most. That aside, Ligue 1 stated that they are against it, as did Serie A and the Premier League. No doubt there will be plenty of other statements coming out today, tomorrow, etc. But at the time of recording this is what we have to work with. Okay, so the format changes. The Super League will sort of mirror the structure that UEFA has with their 3 European club competitions, except with a different format, of course. There will be the Super Mario Star League, which is the top competition, then the Gold League below it, and finally the Blue League. Star, Blue, Gold, aka the European flag. See? We're using the commercial from A22 here, by the way, and I've linked to it below if you prefer listening to a woman's voice and some vibey music as well. So feel free to watch that instead of me breaking it down. But anyway, across the 3 leagues, where UEFA has 72 competing clubs, the Super League would have 64 amongst its divisions. There would be 16 clubs in the Star and Gold Leagues, divided into 2 equal groups, 8 apiece, within their respective divisions, while the Blue League would have 32 teams divided into groups of 8. That's 4 groups. Now, there would be a league stage from September to April in which each team will play a home and away against each team in their division. The teams that finish in the top 4 places in the 2 leagues, in both the Star League and the Gold League, will move on to the knockout round, while the top 2 teams in the Blue League will move on, Champions League style, with 2-legged ties. There will be quarterfinals, then semifinals, and a single leg final to crown the winner of the respective leagues, Star, Gold, and Blue. Now, this is where it differs from the Champions League. There is promotion and relegation within the leagues. In the Star League, the clubs who finish in last in each group, so 2 teams, will be relegated. Same goes for the Gold League, 2 teams there as well, where the Gold League finalists will be promoted to the Star League. Same goes for the Blue League to the Gold League. The 2 last place teams in the Gold League groups will drop to the Blue League, and the Blue League finalists will be promoted. I've said league so many times, it's insane. Now, bottom 20 Blue League clubs will be dropped from the competition. My God. The bottom 20 Blue League clubs will be dropped from the competition entirely, and 20 clubs from within Europe will be promoted into the competition based on their relative league performances. Now, one of the sort of buzzwords that they keep using is that the Super League now has sporting merit. So the merit of it, they did make a slight change here from before, as one of the biggest pushbacks to the original format was that historic big clubs would have a safeguard from being eliminated from the Super League year upon year, simply because they are who they are, and so they would be immune from dropping out of the competition and would always have access to the annual income that the Super League would bring in, hence ensuring that they would continue to make a ton of money and not really address the gap between them and other clubs. This time around, they say that it is an open competition where sporting merit will be taken into account, meaning anyone can get relegated from their respective league. That's a good change on the surface, but it does remove the relevance of how teams finish in their respective leagues somewhat, as so long as you did well within the Super League, you will hang on to your place in that competition. As an example, let's say Real Madrid had an absolute disaster of a season and finished 12th in La Liga. I know it probably wouldn't happen, but for the sake of this example, just hang on here. If that was to happen, but they finished second from bottom in their league, in the Star League, then they get to continue within the Star League for the next season, regardless of how they did in La Liga. Let's say Real Madrid was relegated. This is sounding ridiculous. Maybe Real was a bad choice for the example, but whatever. But let's say they were relegated. So long as they perform well in the Super League, they'll stay at the top and have access to that cash, even though some team like, I don't know, Athletic Club wins La Liga, they have to start in the Blue League. You see how it's still kind of a safeguard, but it looks better on the surface? This, in a sense, and tell me if I'm viewing this wrong, but doesn't this mean that clubs would be incentivized to put more focus on the Super League if that's where all the money is? Wouldn't that lessen the focus on the domestic competitions a bit? Some may say, well, that isn't all that bad actually, as that will perhaps give opportunity to other teams to win the league and then get into the Super League. But that's a question that could only be answered after many years of the Super League being in play, and at the moment, it's not even slated to start at any point and doesn't have many clubs joining in. There's a long way to go. On top of this, they have created a platform called Unify with the claim that All live matches will be streamed for free on Unify. There would be ads eventually on Unify. I guess we'll see, again, if this ever happens. I think ultimately, if I put my love for the history and the prestige of the UEFA competitions aside for a quick moment, which is difficult to do, but I'll do so for the sake of this topic, I'm curious, but still incredibly skeptical of this. I'm curious to see how this plays out, as they are promising the moon at the moment. They made that change to teams no longer being protected in the upper league. Sort of, not really, but I'm ultimately skeptical because for me, this doesn't seem like a move to save football, as A22, Perez, Juve in the past, and Laporta have said, but a move to save their own skins and keep themselves competitive with the state-funded and Premier League clubs, essentially, but more on that later. Does that make sense? As in, I don't see this as an altruistic move from those clubs that have backed it the most, that they suddenly see the need to watch out for the Osasunas of the world that don't have access to money and likely still won't with the Super League. They are interested in securing their own future financially and getting money in so that they can address their debts and become financially stable again after mismanaging funds. I mean, the fact that both Barcelona and Real Madrid would receive a resistance bonus for never abandoning the Super League idea says a lot. And I'm seeing a few Inter supporters dig this idea as well because they need the cash. Juventus could potentially be interested for the same reasons. This would bail them out in a sense after overextending themselves. So of course they would be interested in this. It's the same reason clubs like Benfica in Portugal or clubs from Scotland, the Netherlands, or Belgium could be interested in this, as they constantly have their talent picked off by bigger clubs in the football food chain. More on this in a sec. Because I also wonder, while it will provide additional funding for clubs in a big way, how will it be able to make up for the fact that the Premier League will still continue to get more money from their domestic broadcast deals for their domestic competitions? There's still going to be a gap, even with the additional funds for the rest of the European clubs, which will help their health. It will bail out these clubs that have spent beyond their means in order to try to keep up with the English clubs, but it doesn't really fix the gap. If the English get the same Super League money as everyone else, so long as the domestic league deals don't change, the gap won't change. So as of now, with the information that's out there, it doesn't seem to be a fix for football as a whole. The spending power is still going to be in the Premier League. Maybe it will help teams to kill their debt and allow them to grow, but it doesn't seem to address the fact that broadcast deals for the Premier League are still miles better than any other top league in the world, thus upholding that financial gap. Well, it will help with the financial health of clubs in the Super League. It's just a relative change that will still see the Premier League clubs with higher spending power and the ability to pay more for transfers and salaries. If it lifts the ceiling for other clubs when it comes to transfer fees, it also lifts the Premier League ceiling, relatively speaking. So again, from a financial health point of view for these clubs across Europe, I can understand why it's appealing, but as far as addressing the gap, I don't see what it changes. I also can't help but see the resistance bonus that would be paid to Barcelona and Real Madrid, according to Mundo Deportivo, as a bit of a grab your chin moment. So looking past the threat of clubs collapsing due to their own financial mismanagement and how this will bail them out, for clubs like Benfica as an example, even if they are able to benefit from the ability to offer their players more money salary-wise in order to try to get them to stay, it won't change the fact that players will still want to play for quote-unquote bigger clubs like Real Madrid or something, or their desire to play in the Premier League or La Liga or other competitions outside of Portugal or the Netherlands. That desire won't go away. It will still be there even if they are getting paid more than they usually would. So in this moment, I'm still very skeptical. And anyway, all of this could be a non-starter at this moment because there aren't enough clubs on board to start a Super League. That can change, of course, as their vision and the specifics are explained further, but right now, there are far more no's than there have been yeses, at least publicly. And that's it for now, guys. This will be an ever-evolving story, which of course I will provide updates when there are updates that are big enough to talk about. I thank you for watching this video. I hope it was helpful and that you have a great holiday season should you be celebrating. Beyond that, thanks for everything, and I'll catch you later. Ciao.